everyone, welcome back to Nintendo Everything Refresh. This is Nintendo Everything's brand new weekly podcast where we refresh your memory on what is new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. I'm Nick Serpa, and we are joined by, as usual, three very talented folks from NintendoEverything.com. We've got Luiz Estrella.
Hey everyone.
We've got Nicolas Shade.
Hey everyone.
And we have got Dennis. Dennis, I don't know how to say your last name. Should we just say right, yeah, Dennis G?
Yeah, Dennis G is fine. Yeah, no, Gagliardato is like there's two ways. There's Gagliardato and then there's Gagliardato, so it's more of a tomato-tomato situation. But yes, long Italian last name. I didn't ask for it. I was just born with this. But hello, everybody.
I love it. Dennis Gagliardato, everyone. All right, folks, we have got some exciting topics to talk about this week, starting with everyone's favorite Metroid game that has actually been released in the Switch's lifespan. Oof. Metroid Dread recently got a new boss rush mode. And I believe, Nicolas, you said you've been playing this?
Yeah, I tried it out a couple of days ago, so a few days after release, and it's really making me realize how much I've forgotten about playing the base game.
Did you never get around to beating the base game?
Oh, no, I had, but okay. That was at launch 4 or 5 months ago. And
sure, yeah.
It is difficult. It took me a few tries to be able to do it without any deaths. And it definitely took a few more tries to remember what all the moves were. I was completely forgetting about that one little dash you have in the middle, but it's very fun. I wish it was there at launch, although I sort of understand why it wasn't, but it's definitely a fun addition to the game. The boss fights are one of the highlights, in my opinion. It has some really, really cool set pieces, and the ability to just revisit all of them, also the ability to practice them, since you can do them individually, is all really, really fun. I really enjoyed what I played with it.
So is it just kind of just bam, 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 one boss fight after another, or are there any new twists? Do they shake them up at all, or is it pretty much just exactly the same fight from the main game?
Right. So like you said, it's kind of just straight up bam, 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 one fight after the other. Not like, say, a Kirby True Arena where there's usually remixes of past bosses. This is just very much directly fight the boss that as it is in the game, then fight the next boss, etc. It's all structured, so you always go in a specific order of, I think it's first boss, second boss, one of the central units, and etc., etc.
Got it. Okay. And I can't remember. I mean, is this the first time we've seen this in a Metroid game? Because I feel like they did something with Samus Returns on the 3DS kind of similar, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
I also can't remember, but I also want to say there was something like that in Other M, also Metroid Other M.
Yeah.
Really?
I could be wrong though. Yeah, don't quote me on that. But I feel like just from my memory, I just remember just facing a lot of bosses back to back. But I don't know if it was necessarily labeled as a boss rush or if it was just another mode entirely.
Yeah. So I generally don't know about Other M. That's not a game I've experienced much. I do know that game has a super boss, so it probably has a bit more of an emphasis on bosses in general. But otherwise, I'm fairly certain this is the first time a Metroid game has had a boss rush mode, which is also kind of exciting in its own right.
Yeah, I mean, this is a single player game, and Nintendo, I feel like they've dipped their toes more and more into DLC over the years, but it's just great to see them doing anything with Metroid Dread, because they could have just put this game out and said, "Oh, there you go, here's your Metroid, have fun."
I mean, I really hope.
True. Well, and it was a great game too, so I mean they could have easily, like you said, just released it and called it a day, but it's always nice to see games that especially in Metroid's case where this is the first new Metroid game in probably the better part of 17 years or so. It was a long time. When the marketing came out they had mentioned something like that, but it's nice to see that sort of support on a game that otherwise, or a series rather, that otherwise would have been considered just put up on the shelf. So it's very similar to F-Zero, but thankfully Metroid's kind of come back and sold millions and millions of copies. So
yeah, so I'm reading a little bit more about this boss rush mode, and it looks like there's a couple different versions of it. So it says that after you beat the boss rush mode, there's a survival rush mode, which I guess has you fight as many as you can on a timer. Is that correct?
Yeah, I dipped my toes into the survival rush a little bit. Essentially, you have the 5-minute timer. You fight as many bosses as possible. Every boss you defeat, you get an extra 30 seconds, and I think an additional 30 if you did it without taking any damage. And the goal is to basically beat all the bosses within the time limit if possible, otherwise just beat as many as you can.
Yeah, speedrunners are going to have a field day with that, I feel like.
The other mode that's there is Dread Rush, which is essentially just the regular boss rush, but as if Dread mode was applied, so everything kills you in one hit. I haven't tried that yet because you have to beat the game in Dread mode first, so I've actually started doing that, and I'll probably play that a little casually. But I can only imagine how difficult that is.
You're going to casually jump into the one-hit kill, like, hardest mode in the game.
Casually.
Love the way you said that. Yeah.
That's no problem. We just call that a Sunday around here.
I did die on, like, the second enemy of the game, though, and it happened a lot faster than I expected, so...
That's cool. Yeah, you know, I know... I feel like, you know, this could be... I mean, they could keep this thing alive, right? Like, I know this was just a free update, but, you know, sometimes Nintendo comes out a year down the road and is like, hey, you know, surprise, we're launching a paid expansion. And I know Metroid games are maybe not the best candidate for that, but, you know, it seems, I mean, this is like, what, their second wave of free DLC for this game? I feel like there was something else that came last year. I don't know. I wonder
there's the Dread mode update.
Yeah, I know we're speculating, but I mean, I could see it. I could see them continuing to add to this game if stuff like this is received well.
I would love to see actually paid DLC with, I don't know, a new story or more areas, or more probably they are already developing a sequel in the same engine, seeing how much successful Mercury Steam was with Metroid. I think that game was so well designed, and like Nicolas said, it's weird that we didn't saw a boss rush when the game launched because it seems so perfect. The bosses on these games are so well designed. In past Metroid games, usually like Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, my objective to win the bosses was like to have so much health that I could take a lot of damage to actually kill them. But on Metroid Dread, I can actually avoid their attacks and all of that. So I think that I feel like there's more strategy when I play Metroid Dread.
Yeah, I've seen. I haven't played it yet, which I know is sacrilegious, but I'm trying to get caught up on some of the other Metroid games. But yeah, it always boggles the mind just seeing all the crazy ways people come up with to break the game basically and shoot around the map.
Yeah, that game is fantastic. I mean, when that game came out, it consumed me for a while. I know Metroid games have been sort of known for not being particularly long, but when you're someone who doesn't play like Metroidvanias often, or in my case, I just haven't played Metroid in a very long time. The last one I played was probably Other M back on the no, that's a lie. I played Samus Returns on 3DS, but you know, it does take a lot of time to sort of navigate those maps, right, with how intricate and how interwoven they are, and you know, constantly having to, you know, backtrack and then remember certain areas. And thankfully now the map lays itself a lot better than it has before, so you know, you can remember certain things a little more easily, which is nice, like certain, you know, where certain missile upgrades and stuff are. But prior to that, I mean, you had to do everything by memory or just you know, get a notebook or something, and it was always a lot to remember. But yeah, no, I mean, Metroid Dread has been absolutely fantastic. So it consumed me for a while. I mean, I heard people beating it in, you know, like 5 hours time, but that's typical of a Metroid game. And honestly, you know, even though some people will still complain about the $60 of Metroid Dread or just Metroid in general, I feel like this happens every time a new Metroid game comes out. But it is a fantastic and beautiful game through and through from beginning to end. It's polished. It has so much finesse to it. And man, those boss fights are great. And that last one, oh my god, that last boss fight just it was tough. It was tough, but that game was so rewarding. No, I won't spoil it. I promise I won't spoil it. I'm just gonna say that it was tough but incredibly rewarding, and the challenges that game gives you are all so perfectly balanced and reasonable that never once did I feel the game was being unfair. and it was just simply either a test of patience or me understanding, okay, I'm not prepared for this area yet. Let me go back and see what else I can uncover before I proceed further, you know? And Metroid Dread is just so beautifully, beautifully designed, and honestly, probably one of the most well-designed games in years, not just from Nintendo, but just generally speaking, as a whole within the medium, like within years. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always great when a great game like that gets a lot of support after launch. And speaking of great games, I want to take a minute to just talk about this game that I have been playing. I just put out a review today, actually, the day we were recording, for 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which was just released or is releasing imminently on the Nintendo Switch. Are you guys familiar with this game at all? Have you guys played it already?
I do own it. I do own it on PS4, but I never put as much time as I would have liked into it. It just came out at a bad time for me, and I was just so overwhelmed with everything else going on at the time that I never really gave it the proper time and attention. So, you know, I'm not going to say that I've actually sat and played it because, again, I haven't really properly invested enough time to say or really sort of gather an opinion on it. But from what I've heard, and I know from your statements that we've spoken about through our site's Discord chat, I know you're in love with it, right, Nick?
Oh my gosh, man! I do not throw around the term masterpiece lightly, but this game I feel like absolutely deserves that title. It is just immensely compelling, just from start to end. I mean, if you have any interest in like science fiction storytelling and just really innovative ways of delivering a story, I cannot recommend this game enough. It's like no game is for everyone. I think that's always the disclaimer, right? Like it is at its heart, it's a side-scrolling adventure game and a real-time strategy game, right? So if those aren't your genres, you may not enjoy it as much as I did. But I think I said this in my review, but it makes a really good case for just what's possible in this medium from an artistic perspective.
And I think you had mentioned that you kind of compared it. You said it was akin, at least maybe not so much gameplay-wise, but stylistically to Muramasa. You had mentioned. Is that correct?
Well, so it's developed by Vanillaware, who made Muramasa, and it's just got their signature just look to it. Like if you've played a Vanillaware game, it's got this amazing, just everything is hand painted, down to the point where you can see the individual brushstrokes in some of the details if you look closely enough. It's truly just a stunning game to look at. And something that really surprised me, I mean, I figured it would be a beautiful game going in, but the sound design of this game is just phenomenal. I mean, I didn't think that, taking like this 2D representation of Japan, I didn't expect it to immerse me so much, but just the way they layer the different sounds of the environment, it really makes it feel like a real place, which is, I think, a huge testament to just how immersive this game is.
I never played Muramasa myself personally, but I have played their other games. Two in particular, Odin Sphere, and what was it? Dragon's Crown was the other one, and those are both fantastic. So honestly, it doesn't surprise me that your statements sort of echo their prior works, because they're clearly a team that is very passionate and just artistic, and more than anything, I feel like that art style just brings you in right away, and then on top of that, they give you compelling gameplay and just a captivating story, and you just have all these beautiful elements that sort of construct like you said, a masterpiece, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those games that it definitely slipped under the radar when it came out. I mean, I didn't really know about it until I heard someone else mention it on a gaming show or somewhere along those lines. And I feel like, part of that is because of the time it came out and the fact that it's kind of a weird fit for a game that kind of launched on a PS4. this kind of side-scrolling animation and just the way they present all the strategy, the combat portion of the game, it really just feels like it was built for the Switch. And I'm not sure why it took so long to come to the Switch, but it feels like a game that was built for this platform. And especially on the OLED model, it just makes a really good case for the use of that system.
I believe it. I think that's another reason why I wasn't really in a hurry to jump back into it on PS4, because I was like, this is so perfect for the Switch. Why it's not there is baffling. Now it is, which is great. So maybe this will give me a chance to, just buy it again and jump back in on a platform that I feel would easily call itself, at home. Versus the PS4, where games like that, I always use remote play on my PlayStation Vita to play them instead. I never played them on the TV. I just don't find games like that to be, suitable for that way. I'm not saying you can't play it that way.
Right.
But it's just a lot more comfortable in a handheld setting for you to, be laying down and, really just get in like you would, like a good book.
Yeah, this is definitely a plug in good headphones, sit in bed with the light turned off, and just get sucked in kind of game, for sure.
I'm really excited to play that game. The first time that I heard people talking about it, and I searched on the internet, and I saw that the game didn't have a version for the Switch, and I was like, oh, why? This game seemed perfect for the Switch. And then I saw it was Atlus publishing, so it made more sense, because Atlus does not make sense when they choose the consoles to publish their games.
No, they do not.
But the style seems so perfect. I really like everyone saying that there's a focus on the plot, and that the plot is insane with so many plot twists. And that it reminds a little of Evangelion. I saw some comparisons with some elements of Persona also. So it's just the kind of game that I know that I will love, and I think I'll buy it for my Switch soon.
Yeah, I definitely think, I hope people go and read the review and just check out this game, because I think, this is definitely the kind of, if you're interested in these really just strong narrative experiences, this is the kind of stuff to go and vote with your wallet with, in my opinion, if it's your jam.
I wanted to ask something about that, by the way. I'm also super excited for the game. It really caught my interest after seeing so many people respond positively about it, and also after reading your review, which is fantastic.
Well, thank you.
And I was kind of wondering, this seems like obviously, it's a very story-heavy game, and it's split between 13 different playable characters. How long is this, and how's it managed to separate these 13 different viewpoints and make them feel all consistent, equal, and fulfilling? Because that seems very difficult.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I started this game. I was not sure how that could possibly work, and somehow it does. And the way I can best describe it is, the game does a good job at not overwhelming you. There are 13 different characters, but the game paces itself pretty well. So in the more story-driven half of the game, you're basically given a menu where over time you unlock more of the main 13 protagonists, right? So you start off with a few, and you kind of go through their route, and eventually it opens up another character, and then another character. So that's one way. And then the other way is, you might be playing through one character as part of the story, and then the game will say, all right, you can't progress through more of this character's route until you play someone else's, right? So then you'll jump over to another character's route, and you'll be like, wait, I saw this scene earlier, or part of this scene, but from a different character's perspective. So over time, you start to see, scenes that you've already seen before kind of connect, and maybe where one scene left off, you see it picking right up from another character's perspective. And so that's kind of how they weave everything together. And it is definitely something that you have to stick with, because I was definitely confused for the first maybe 5 or 6 hours. And but once you start seeing those scenes starting to meld together, everything starts to click. And I think if people can get to that point in the game, it's definitely worth it.
Interesting.
I think that sort of technique and way of storytelling is so brilliant if you can execute it masterfully, right? Because what you're saying reminds me a lot of games like Radiant Historia, and even games like that maybe aren't so obvious, something like Zero Escape, right? Where Zero Escape, you have all of these people sort of, well, trying to escape in this escape room setting, trying to, fight for their lives. But sometimes you go to different chapters and you can access different routes. And especially in the case of Zero Time Dilemma, where it's hard to talk about without spoiling too much, but you do sort of, you will go back and see certain perspectives from different characters and accessing a new route, and even though you're doing the same puzzle again, you now can access maybe a different part of that puzzle that maybe made no sense to you at first that now you have the answer for.
Exactly.
Right? And yeah, no, that way is just, it's so brilliant when it's when it's well done. It blows my mind every time. It never fails to blow my mind. It's great. And Octopath Travel was actually pretty good at that too, I felt.
Yeah, my whole thought, one of the main thoughts in my head when I was playing this, I was like, how on earth did they pull this off? Like someone had I'm sure they had a whole team of writers, but you have to have the story planned out. And I'm being intentionally vague about the specifics of the story because I don't want to spoil anything. But you have to have a story like this planned out, down to the sentence. It feels like for a project
absolutely.
like this. So it blew me away.
Well, they must have some crazy boardroom where they just have like you see in detective movies, right? The pins everywhere connecting the dots and it's crazy just how intricate those the narrative can get for something that's so as deep as that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a really great experience, and I could talk about it probably a lot longer than this, but we should definitely move on because there are other games, believe it or not. Something that just came out last week, as of the time of this recording, was Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers edition, which I think was revealed in a Nintendo Direct. Am I right about that?
Yep, I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. I know we got some RPG fans here. I've never played Chrono Trigger or Chrono Cross myself, but kind of popped up under my radar because of this re-release. But I've heard it hasn't been performing really well.
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure how it's been performing. I haven't really like looked up anything personally, but that's kind of crazy if it hasn't. You said it hasn't been performing well, is that right? If I heard you correctly?
No, yeah, I read several reviews of this game actually. I haven't played it myself, but they were talking about this. Keep in mind this is a PlayStation game that's a little more than a port, but they put in some work. They increased some of the textures or whatever, but lots of just complaints about just really just stuttery frame rates and just really just not what you would expect from a port of a PlayStation game to modern consoles.
Yeah, I think one of the unfortunate parts is the fact that this doesn't really surprise me entirely. Just because when it comes to quote-unquote remasters, Square Enix, historically speaking, has kind of done the bare minimum as of late. And yes, they have some of the greatest RPGs ever made, and just an incredible, catalog, to begin with. However, when we do see these sorts of ports or remasters, they are done with very little to no attention, right? And I think it all started years and years ago when we started seeing mobile ports, right? Mobile ports of earlier Dragon Quest games and then earlier Final Fantasy games. And then when those now started getting ported over to Steam, those have been an absolute mess, right? And and even if we're completely disregarding some of the classics, when we're talking about PS1 games and Super Nintendo games and whatnot, even stuff like Final Fantasy 13, and games around that era where whenever they would be ported over to PC or elsewhere, more modern hardware, they caused more issues that got to the point where it just wasn't even worth attempting to play, right? And it just became such a headache that the reliability of Square Enix started to lessen and I think most recently we've been seeing that a lot, like I was saying, with some of the more Final Fantasy remasters. Not so much like 7 and 6 and 8, but more with we're talking like 2, 3, and 4 around there. And even though they have the pixel remasters that are coming out, those are still kind of bare minimum at best. Because if you go to Steam and look at the reviews for some of these games, I mean, they are just horrid, right? People are just complaining for pretty much the same issues, right? Frame rate issues, stuttering. Sometimes there's little to no accessibility options. It only opens in window mode, and then if you try to do full screen, it just crashes. It's just a mess. It's a mess everywhere.
Yeah, which is it's a shame because I love the fact that they're making some of these RPGs available, to play on modern systems. But yeah, it does feel like it always comes with some caveat. I mean, I'm sure though that there are plenty of Chrono Cross fans out there who are just like, yes, like finally I can play this on the go.
Oh, sure, and it's great because Chrono Cross alongside Chrono Trigger are both fantastic, but I don't know. It's just Square Enix, historically speaking, just has not been good when it comes to handling these sorts of ports, and they do the bare minimum that also I feel doesn't match up with what the sort of asking price, right? And meanwhile, on the other side, you've got Capcom, who are just doing an incredible amount of work on their remasters and ports on the Switch specifically. Whether we're talking about the Ace Attorney trilogy, or whether we're talking about something like Dragon's Dogma, or even some of the older Resident Evils, whether it's 0 or the original Resident Evil, or 4, 5, and or 6. And so on and so forth, Revelations, all those. Capcom's just been doing such a great job, I feel, with their ports and sort of respecting the consumer as well as respecting the original, the original just work of the developers, and just making sure that, hey, we're bringing this to modern consoles, but we want to make sure that you do have an experience that feels fresh. Never mind when it originally came out. If you're playing this for the first time, we want to make sure it's accommodating, it's refreshing, and it's sort of revitalizing, not only for you, but for the series as well.
Those, I think I agree with Dennis. I think not only on Square, but I think we saw a lot of strange remasters more recently. I think I think with Square, they have a big issue because during the PS1 era, they decided to make a lot of games with the characters and some elements being 3D models, but the background is like a painting, like a static image. And when you try to remaster those games, it looks just horrible. I really don't like the look of games like Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy VII, and now Chrono Cross, which works in the same way. So we have like this Frankenstein of a game where the characters have those low poly models, really, really polished. It looks very strange in contrast to the low poly backgrounds.
So I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it looks
with
really
like high
weird.
definition font. It's super weird. Yeah, no, you're right, Luiz.
And I think the what they do usually is not enough. Recently, they released the remaster of Legends of Mana, and it looked really good. I bought the game, and I really like what they did. They put the game in a new aspect ratio, and in that game, everything was drawn. There was no 3D models, so it was way easier to make everything looks good. Mm-hmm. But in those games like Chrono Cross and the Final Fantasy, it really looks a little weird. And then on top of that, we have Digital Foundry made the analysis, and in battle the game drops to 20 FPS, 15 FPS, which is really weird when you're looking at a PS1 game. Not only on Switch, but also on PS4. They have very similar frame rate, which led me to believe that this is actually a problem with the codes of the game and not the console.
It does sort of basically. No, you're absolutely right, Luiz. It does when you have that consistent issue from platform to platform, even with a super old game that otherwise you would expect to be running perfectly. I think it inherently just comes down to the code, like you were saying. I think most famously, or infamously rather, the Silent Hill collection, right, where like that is still to this day just absolutely broken for a lot of people. And apparently the reason being is because with the first Silent Hill specifically, or maybe it was the second one, they just could not find the original code for it, so they found unfinished code, and Konami was basically like, okay, all right,
yeah,
this
that's
will
good.
do. Yeah, that's good.
What a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, it's like I said, I mean, there's always going to be, I feel like, even if this game came out and it's going to be perfect, people are going to say, oh, it looks dated or whatever. There's always something. I do appreciate just the fact, from a preservation standpoint, that the game is here at all. But hopefully Square Enix will, after all this time, maybe their next one will be better. Who knows?
Or update the Chrono Cross, release updates, fixing things. I still want to buy that game because I think that for a turn-based RPG, FPS is not that big of an issue. But I hope that they release some patches to make things a little smoother.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Dennis, I read your preview on the site. Sounds like you had a much better time with a game you've been playing lately. Tell us a little bit about Neon White. What is this first-person card shooter game?
Yeah, it's crazy. So about roughly 2 weeks ago, we had the pleasure over at Nintendo Everything to, sit, chat, and just kind of watch Ben Esposito play his new game, Neon White. Now, if you're not familiar with Ben Esposito, he's the creative mind behind Donut County, Tattletale, and he has other credits under under other incredible games like What Remains of Edith Finch, right? So he's a creative mind that is just like he's everywhere, right? Because none of these games, when you look at them or play them or try to compare them with his other works, they're nothing alike. They either look stylistically different, they play different, they're under a different genre. Everything about them is different, and I just respect that about him just insanely, just because I love that sort of not being a prisoner of your own style, right? And wanting to just let the creativity sort of speak for itself and not being too comfortable with like, hey, I really like RPGs, let me just make RPGs all the time, right? Like he's basically like, I just feel like making an FPS, or in this case, I just feel like making a speedrunning game, So,
would you use the word? Yeah, would you use the word auteur to describe him?
Auteur. So, to a degree, I thought about it, and there's a reason why I didn't use that specific word in my preview, even though it did come to my mind a couple of times. Now, everyone's kind of definite. I mean, there is a set definition for auteur, but I think what I see as an auteur is someone who is basically dabbles in every single tiny thing of the creation of the creative process, right? So It doesn't, whether it's a game or a film or a piece of music, like your name needs to be under like 90% of the credits. Now, I'm not saying don't ask for help. Absolutely ask for help, right? Like, Hideo Kojima I would consider an auteur, right? But again, he has a big company, Kojima Productions, that employs quite a lot of people, right? So, because of course he's not going to be able to do everything himself. However, he does sort of walk around and he already has everything in his head. He's got everything laid out, and then it's a matter of delegating those tasks, but everything is from his mind. And it's very similar in the case of Ben Esposito, with all, giving credit where credit's due. But there is, I still feel, just enough of a teamwork aspect that, where he does sort of get outside influence, to the point where I wouldn't quite call him an auteur just yet. But at the same time, if other people feel that he is, I think he is deserving of it. But me personally, just from how I break down what an auteur is, he's close. He's close, but not quite there yet.
So as far as the game goes, like how does this work exactly? So I know it's kind of like a deck builder, but it's also kind of like a first-person shooter.
Yeah, so it's a crazy hybrid of genres, man. It's wild. When we were watching it, and just so there's no misconception, I myself actually didn't get a chance to play it. I wish I did, because that game is totally up my alley. But we actually just sat and watched Ben Esposito play it and kind of talk about his sort of influences and his inspirations and sort of overall goals in the creation of Neon White. And yeah, no, it's a crazy hybrid of, here's a first-person shooter mixed with a speedrunner, mixed with a platformer, mixed with a visual novel. And yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So basically, you have a set of cards, right? And each card has two abilities. You can choose to either use the card as a weapon, or if you discard the card, that will give you an ability that will enhance your sort of parkour abilities, right? So, but it's up to you what you want to use or how you want to play those cards, right? You can use it the whole way through as like, okay, now I have a card that has an SMG on it, so it's going to shoot like an SMG, right? But should I keep it or should I discard it right away and then get, let's just say, a super jump? Because you can totally do that, and or maybe even get a triple jump, right? Or get some insane sort of ground pound that'll get you, from a very tall point down to the furthest platform as quick as possible. Because the gravity is like really light.
Okay.
In neon white, so you can discard those cards, for a quick sort of flash all the way down to the next platform. So there's so many different ways to optimize these levels. It's going to be exciting to see how everyone sort of plays through these levels.
Yeah, and so is it okay? Two questions. First of all, are the cards just kind of like floating around the environment, or do you just like get them randomly, or how does that work? And is it like a level-based game, or is it like kind of more like a roguelike in structure?
No, it's definitely a level-based game, and the cards are set in stone on every level. So, and the reason for being is because Ben Esposito talked about this, where they initially tried randomized cards, but it was way too confusing, and getting through the levels just wasn't comfortable enough, because you never knew what you were going to get, and then deck building, first of all, takes way too much time on a game that has levels that you're supposed to go as fast as possible with, right? So you kind of have, if you're randomly sort of collecting cards and building a deck in that regard, there's too much conflict there to make it seamless. So it was easier for them to just have the cards already set on the level and have it be the same every time. That way, if you want to replay those levels, you can optimize each run every time, because maybe you don't want to discard a card the first time around, but then you do it the next time, and then that, let's just say, shoots you up with like a super jump all the way up to this platform that you didn't even know existed, and then that's a cool little shortcut, right? So the levels, even though they may look simple on the surface, if you play them over and over again, you will find a crazy amount of shortcuts. And he was going through the same level a couple of times, and he was like, look, you can go this way, or if you discard this, you can go this way, and just, crashing through a wall. And it's like, whoa, my God. Like, it's all this stuff you didn't expect if you're just trying to blast through the first time around. But if you actually sit there and repeat the level over and over again, you can go from your first run being 40 seconds down to literally as quick as like 15 seconds. It's crazy how you can optimize each one of these levels. And they're not meant to be long levels. He said the biggest reason why we're putting this on Switch exclusively at the moment is because, well, outside of PC, is because it's the perfect pick up and play game, right? But we also want you to play it in sort of increments rather than something to binge on, even though you could absolutely binge on it. But it's definitely more of like a, look, we don't want to take up too much of your time, so why don't you do a level or two, run through it in like a minute or two, and then go on with your day. So yeah, it's like super accessible in a lot of ways. And he was also explaining that, look, speedrunning might not be for everybody, parkour might not be for everybody, a la Mirror's Edge, stuff like that. But this game is not asking, number one, a lot of your time, and number two, we've kept the controls and sort of mechanics super simple to the point where even if you're not into those games, we promise that you will at least have something to love about this, if not just at least the visual novel portion of it, which is a awesome sort of story-driven part of the game.
Well, it's definitely, anytime a game is trying to do something unique and different, it always drops onto my radar. Luiz, Nicolas, is this on your radar at all? You guys plan on picking this up at some point?
Yeah, I looked into it a little bit after your preview came out, Dennis, because it really did seem interesting. I looked at some gameplay videos. It gives me really big vibes of other similar speedrunning first-person games. Things like Verlaine Swing or Cyberhook come to mind. And it's super cool. I love the card system. Everything seems so almost eclectic. Like the way you have the card system, it's a first-person shooter. You have the visual novel aspects, the writing. It all kind of seems like it comes together in this weird, perfect, chaotic mix. Which I guess, like you said, is a result of the creators just having so much experience with all these different genres. The other thing that I thought was really neat in this particular scenario is that he mentioned in the preview how much he's focusing on the Switch being a basically perfect version of the game, or being at equivalent to like a PC version, making sure that the game runs just as well on Switch and is just as good of an experience, which is always really nice to see when it comes to indie games.
Yeah, no, it's
So
great.
We're not
I mean,
gonna
he
get a Chrono
said,
Cross situation here, is what you're saying.
No. He didn't show us any of the Switch stuff, unfortunately, but he did say that, look, Switch to us is not a second-tier platform. You know, this is a 1-1, you know, sort of conversion of what you're going to get on PC day one. And not only that, but they were so committed to the Switch because they wanted it to run at a fluid 60 frames that they had to actually rebuild a lot of the assets from the ground up and change a lot of the shaders and the textures specifically for Switch. But, you know, it wasn't as simple as just like, you know, let's just lower the resolution. We'll just, you know, lower the file size and stuff like that just to get everything to fit and make everything run as seamless as possible. Because they wanted it to look, run, and play identical. And if that meant spending a year to rebuild everything from the ground up specifically for the Switch and recreate everything, so be it. And that's exactly what they did. Like, they were committed.
Yeah.
They were committed, and I
that's
respect
great.
the hell out of it. So.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah. So, do you know when this game is coming out?
I wish I had a date, man. I really do,
Have they
but no
said,
date,
or-
unfortunately.
Not yet.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Still nothing. Nope. Ready when it's ready, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, we will. Are you going to be reviewing this one when it comes out? Do you think?
That would be great. That would be awesome. But at the moment, no plans.
All right. Well, we will keep this one on our radar, and we will hopefully see it coming out sooner rather than later. We'll just do a quick update here. Seems like we're getting more and more updates to Switch Online lately, which is great. Latest big announcement was Mario Golf coming to N64 Online. I don't know if we have too many. Do we have any Mario Golf fans in the house over here?
Oh, I'm a big Mario Golf fan, but I don't have that expansion pack though for Switch Online, so you know it won't mean much to me. But I'm still having a great time with you know the newest Mario Golf that just came out on Switch. So you know I won't miss too much unless I'm feeling nostalgic.
So you don't think this is not the tentpole release that is going to get you to subscribe to the Switch Online expansion pack? Is what you're saying?
I'd be lying if I said I didn't consider it. but yeah, no, still not enough. Not yet. Not yet.
All right. Well, if that's not enough, I mean, I got another option for you. Did you know that apparently, I didn't know this until Nintendo announced it. Apparently, there's a Dig Dug 2.
I did not know about Dig Dug 2. No,
Well-
I love Dig Dug though.
Well-
I really do. I've spent a stupid amount of hours on Dig Dug.
Well, I did not know there was a Dig Dug 2 either, but apparently there is, and apparently that is also now on Switch Online as of March 30th. So there you go.
Is that part of the expansion as well, or is that just with normal
No,
Switch
normal.
Online subscribers?
Just normal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So don't
okay,
worry,
fantastic.
Dennis. That one
You
is
got
just
Dig Dug
waiting
2.
for you.
Yeah. A little something for everybody then. I love it. I love it. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's I don't know why I just find that so funny. It's just like how do you make? Apparently, the answer to how do you make a sequel to Dig Dug is you do it above ground because it is not underground like Dig
From
Dug
what I
is.
heard, this
so
is the
he's just
bad
done
one.
digging.
Oh. You've heard it's not very good.
Yeah, did not play yet. I just heard people saying that the first one is the better.
Interesting. I almost feel like I need to play this out of more curiosity.
Sad
There
to
are other
hear.
games.
Sad to
Yeah,
hear it's
there
not
are
a
other
Steam
games.
sequel.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, if Dig Dug 2 is not your jam, there's also Earthworm Jim 2 and Mappy Land. So everyone, get your party hats on for those. I know we've all been.
Hey, don't sleep on Earthworm Jim. That's a big throwback if you want like a crazy like sci-fi platformer.
Yes. I know there's definitely a fandom around that for sure.
Yeah, those updates with the SNES and the NES, we've seen worse. That's not one of the worst ones. At least we have our Thumb Jin and the classic Dig Dug too.
But look, and maybe I'm asking for too much here, but man, Japan, they're getting Shin Megami Tensei games on Switch Online.
Oh yeah.
And we're getting Dig Dug 2. I mean,
Harvest
don't get me
Moon.
wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look, I grew up, as I'm sure you guys did as well. Like, I grew up with the NES and the Super Nintendo, right? So, like, of course, a lot of these games hold a special place in my heart. But honestly, I've probably touched those applications maybe like 2 or 3 times at most, man. I played Super Mario World, like, from beginning to end, because I love speedrunning that game. So I played that, and I love speedrunning the original Super Mario Brothers. But after I was done with that, I was just like, all right, I'll see you later. And I haven't touched those applications in years. So, but if we got the content that Nintendo Switch Online users in Japan are getting, like, absolutely. Like, Shin Megami Tensei, are you kidding me? I'd be all over that. So,
yeah. I think it was one of the Japan-only entries, which is why we didn't get it. But,
in general, it would be really nice to just get more RPGs in the West on Switch Online. That definitely feels
There's
like
this
the
the first Fire Emblem, which received a special release with the collector edition and all of that. It never came to our Switch Online, right?
No.
And it is
I don't think
available
so.
on Japan as part of the plan. But here they released the game as a standalone title, but never actually released the game on the online system. And now it's basically impossible to buy because it was a limited release, just like Super Mario 3D All Stars. It didn't make sense.
which is its own problem.
Well, it's weird because I mean, there's no way it's a licensing issue because it's Nintendo. They I mean, they can put it wherever they want. Like, so it's just a weird choice.
yeah.
I'm not sure. Like,
except that just
what the legalities
requires it requires effort, and that's maybe a little too much to ask. Switch Online. I don't
maybe,
know. Well, let's switch to something that I think we can all get at least a little excited about. It was very recently that Xenoblade celebrated its 10th anniversary of its release here in the United States, at the very least. It released in Europe a little bit beforehand, if I'm, I think I'm, it came out a little bit before, and then it came here in North America. So we're celebrating 10 years of watching Shulk go around with a big red sword.
That's a great way to describe it.
But probably a little more to it than that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just. I think what is great about that celebration, specific about the US release, it's because we had all the Operation Rainfall context where fans were really asking for Xenoblade to be not only Xenoblade but also The Last Story and Pandora's Tower. Mm-hmm. And it actually happened. All the 3 games were released on the US, so it's great to see that a campaign like that actually works. And not only that, but nowadays Xenoblade it's out of the question. Xenoblade is always released at the worldwide at the same time. So it's really great to see how much the series has developed over the years and how popular it is nowadays. We are already seeing the 3rd game in the main series, but we also had Xenoblade X, and Monolith Soft has gone to become one of the greatest studios from Nintendo. I mean, probably one of the most important right now, because they not only developed Xenoblade but also are helping with Zelda, with Splatoon, with Animal Crossing. Mm-hmm. So it's just crazy to see how far they've gone since the release of the first Xenoblade.
Yeah, it's such an insane landmark release. Like, Operation Rainfall is something that's, I'm pretty sure, almost unheard of. Like this is one of the big things. Like, this has never really happened before. And yet, those 3 games got localized, and Pandora's Tower and Last Story sadly didn't get the same success that Xenoblade did. Like, Xenoblade's success has led to a lot. We probably wouldn't have Monolith Soft where it is now without it. We might not even have games like Breath of the Wild where they are now without it. The fact that it was so difficult to get this game released, they took so much effort from the community, and yet it happened and it's resulted in such a wonderful thing, is really something that should be celebrated.
And I think not only talking about those 3 specific games, but I think Operation Rainfall was like a statement saying, we at the US, we like JRPGs. Please release your JRPGs to the US, because after that, mainly on the Wii U and now on Switch, almost all of Nintendo games release worldwide. It's very rare to see a game that does not release here in the US. So I think it was a statement about JRPG in general. Like, don't leave us out of the party. So I think it really is important.
It is fascinating to me that it happened at all. And as far as I can remember, I really don't think anything like that has happened since then. Like, I mean, fans are always asking to bring, games over, but it's so rare. I can't think of another time where people have basically made an internet petition and said, bring these 3 games over, and they actually do it. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see them do that again. I mean, it's just, I'm so glad they did, because you're like, yes, of course we want this giant, sprawling, narrative-driven RPG worldwide.
Yeah.
Well, and those games in particular, The Last Story and Pandora's Tower, I think, even though I didn't spend much time with the Wii, those, to me personally, sort of defined that console. Like, outside of the regular Nintendo stuff, like, those were both, personally, I found to be masterpieces.
Yeah, it is kind of a shame that, I mean, as far as, I think we're probably not going to see, Pandora's Tower or The Last Story, anywhere else. I mean, I would love to see it, but especially, the Wii U eShop is shutting down. You can currently buy Pandora's Tower digitally there, but once it's gone, I mean, that game is going to be hard to find. Last Story is already very expensive to pick up. That game never got a digital release, so,
I'm looking at it now on just judging from Amazon, not on eBay, but I'm seeing it now. It's $171 if you want a copy of my story. So,
I think
and $100
they are
for
perfect
Pandora Tower.
candidates for a remaster. I mean, we are seeing so much remaster, and it doesn't need much. Just upgrade the resolution, make a little work on the texture, and it's good to go.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense.
So, all right, thought experiment. Do you guys think that Breath of the Wild would have, been at the scope that it was without Monolith Soft's help? Because my understanding is they were a huge part of the world design of that game.
Yeah.
It's a curious thought because Monolith already helped with Skyward Sword. And it's funny because Skyward Sword is exactly the opposite of Breath of the Wild. But on Skyward Sword, they helped a lot with designing the map, what they do best. Even though it's a very linear game, they helped on that front. And part of me thinks that without or with Monolith Soft, Nintendo would go for a more open approach with Breath of the Wild after the feedback from Skyward Sword. But maybe without Monolith Soft, they wouldn't be able to do such a good work with open worlds, because they had that team with all that pedigree from the Xenoblade series, Xenoblade X in particular, which has an amazing sprawling world.
Oh yeah.
So I think they were the defining aspects, but they were very important for how it play out so well, how the game ends up looking so good with the open world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were definitely a massive contributor. They're such experts at this point in terms of designing these kinds of open worlds, and I have a hard time imagining Breath of the Wild turning out the same way if they hadn't lent their touch. Like, to the detriment of Xenoblade 2 in some ways, because that game had such a reduced staff because of all the help that they were providing to Breath of the Wild. Right. And it's just, man, I'm so excited to see what they do with Xenoblade 3, how much more open that's going to be. And even just if we'll see any of that Monolith touch appear in Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Xenoblade games, they're always, from what I've heard, just constantly raising their own bar. And as far as the scope of these games alone, I mean, very few developers are making RPGs of this size. The only recent release I can think of that's maybe is up there is like Tales of Arise, but they really just excel at creating these worlds, and it's just I'm so glad that Nintendo took the leap and brought these games over.
Absolutely.
To this day, I never had an experience to the same level of flying in a mecha on
Oh,
Xenoblade
yeah.
X. It's like it's
That's
so fantastic because you can go from one area to the other without a loading screen. It's totally crazy.
It's great.
Well, folks, that about wraps up our show for the week. But before we go, what's everyone been playing? Dennis, let's start with you. What have you been playing lately in your free time?
Sure. So, actually, over the last couple of days, couldn't help it. Got on the hype train of Lego Star Wars. So, was planning on waiting for a sale for that, but my girlfriend surprised me with that. So that was that. That was a really nice surprise. Yeah. So I've been playing that like crazy, man. It's an insane amount of fun. Basically, everything Luiz said in his review and even his preview before that was spot on. I mean, it is a beautiful looking game, and man, the amount of content in that game is just huge, bigger than any Lego game before it. And being able to compile every single Star Wars film, up to this point, and not only that, but have such great additional content, original content on top of that, with that Lego humor and that Lego charm, is just great. And the new perspective also with these big open hubs is just fantastic. And I'm playing on the Xbox Series X and S also, and wow, I mean, the game is gorgeous. But to give credit to the Switch, it actually looks really good there too. They did a very good job in sort of making sure that there was that sort of just as close to just making everything as equal as possible, right, across all the platforms. And
The best looking plastic you'll ever see in a video game.
absolutely. But I think the one thing I'm slightly sort of upset with, not so much on the Switch, because I don't think the Switch has this capability, but I do wish that there was ray tracing. However, again, credit where credit's due, the lighting and the shading and the reflections looks like really, really good, where I actually did have to question, like, is this ray tracing? But it was not.
Yeah, this is news to me. I mean, from what I saw in the trailers, I was like, wow, the lighting looks great. It must be ray traced. But
no, it's not.
I'm really excited to check that game out. I'm waiting for. I have a Steam Deck that hopefully come in later this year, and I feel like that's going to be a great game to play on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crank up the graphics.
I had to cancel mine, unfortunately.
Oh no!
But you'll have to let me know how that is. Yeah.
Well, Luiz, what about you? I know you said last time we asked you were playing through the Metroid Prime trilogy.
Yeah, so I'm at the middle of the second game, Echoes, but I decided to stop because I think I don't like to finish a game and then start because I did that because I was really excited with the first one, but I think sometimes you get a little of a saturation if you're playing a game with a very similar sequel and then you finish one and then start the other. So I decided to give it a little time, and after playing the Lego Star Wars for the review, I was still craving more Star Wars content, even though the game has a lot of content. But then I've gone to Game Pass and I saw the Jedi Fallen Order, which is a game that I was I was looking to play for a long time, and I decided to start it. And so far, very solid game. It's I like because I wanted. I think what I want was a new Star Wars story, and the Lego Star Wars, of course, they adapt the movies. So I was looking for something a little bit different with the lore, and so far I'm really enjoying it. It's an action game. It's a really good action game. I was really surprised with the level of difficulty. I've been having a lot. It's not at the level of Dark Souls, but it's like Dark Souls easier. Dark Souls for babies, something like that. Yeah. It still is a little hard.
It is.
The combat it's a little similar, but I've been enjoying so far.
I've heard people say there are some kind of Metroidvania elements to that game, in that there's some backtracking.
The exploration, it's kind of similar. I would say it's a little bit more linear. I mean, I'm at the first area. I don't know how it will go in the future, but so far it's a little similar in the exploration aspect, but it's not the kind of world that you get lost exploring.
Got it. Okay.
It kind of reminds a Metroidvania.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That one has been on my playlist for a while. I'm hoping to get to that one soon too.
Yeah, it's so good. Like, if anyone listening, or if any of you guys have Game Pass and you haven't tried it yet, please do yourself a favor and try it. Because when that game came out, I couldn't like put it down like at all. It just immersed me. It captivated me. And then after I beat it, I wanted to just go and restart it again, which is usually rare for me lately, just because we have so much to review and so much to play that you kind of once you're done you kind of move on. But immediately after the credits started rolling, I was like, all right, let's go again. It was
Wow. That's high
so
praise.
good. Yeah, no,
It's really good so
great.
far.
What about you, Nicholas? What has been on your gaming consoles lately? What have you been playing?
So I've still been hacking away Xenoblade 2, like I said 2 weeks ago, playing through that.
Wait, you're not done yet?
I'm
infinite
very
game.
surprised. I know. I've just slowed my pace.
Pick up
It's
the
terrible.
pace.
But yeah, I recently beat the main story in New Game Plus, and now just doing all the side content, doing all the side quests, merc missions. So slowly hacking away at that. Like I mentioned earlier, I started playing Metroid Dread mode, and I think I will probably be playing that in bursts because, my god, does it require some focus to play, having to avoid every single enemy in hazard, because everything one-shots you. Really fun,
Yeah.
but holy moly, that's it requires some dedication, so I'll be grinding through that slowly. Other than that,
Yeah,
I've
those are
been
two
thinking-
two very different games to go between.
Oh, yeah.
Between Xenoblade and then getting one-shotted in Metroid.
Yeah, but it's it makes for a diverse and fun experience.
Yeah, no, that's great. It sounds like you guys have all been busy. 13 Sentinels has been taking up a lot of my time, but that is donezo, so I am going through and trying to finish up some of the games that I was playing before that. I was playing AI The Somnium Files through Game Pass, and I'm almost done with it. Not as in love with it as I had thought I would be. I also just, for anyone out there thinking of doing this, please don't play 2 games about time travel and alternate realities at the same time. It's really just not a good idea.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, very much so. I like that game okay. It's, the humor doesn't really land with me personally. I was excited about it because it's, from the people behind Zero Escape, and, that's just one of my favorite narrative-driven games of all time. And I don't think this game quite matches the highs of that game, but
I felt the same way.
yeah. It's something different, and I definitely appreciate what they were trying to do with it. And I'm excited to play the sequel, hopefully, this summer.
Nice.
All right, folks. Well, that is our show for the week. Thank you so much for tuning in to Nintendo Everything Refresh, Episode 3. Remember, you have already listened to this one, but if you've been watching on YouTube, there are now audio versions on most major streaming platforms. So we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, you name it, we are probably there. So go check us out there if that is more convenient for you. And feel free to drop us a line if you guys have any topics you want to see on the show, any suggestions. Our show email is in the description, so feel free to reach out to us there or leave us a comment. Let us know what you like, what you don't. And we will be back next week with more Nintendo news and everything going on in the world of Nintendo. So thank you so much, you guys.